Gone are the days of console exclusivity. Gone are the days that we gamers aren't allowed to sit with each other and enjoy the games we also want to play. That is, if you're willing to wait for it. In February of 2017, I was a senior in high school, playing games exclusively on my gaming computer that I had proudly built myself. I saw that this game was releasing on PS4, Horizon Zero Dawn, and said, and continued on with my life because I didn't want to play a filthy console peasant video game. Over 3 years later, in August of 2023, it was released again, but on the PC. Finally, after years of not caring, I was able to buy the game that people said was actually pretty decent. Right after I was done adding it to my cart, I heard the port sucked, like usual, so I emptied my cart and went on my way. I reluctantly purchased this game on a heavy discount, but, thank you, Gaben. I kept it in the back of my library for who knows how long, and added it to my ever-growing list of games that I needed to play in my backlog. Then, I saw this really cool-looking Lego set. Ooh, and if you know me, I love Legos. And I said I needed to beat the game first before I bought it. So, let's go ahead and review the game, shall we? Warning, I will be going over a major spoiling points of the story. Gameplay, performance, etc. Especially like the story is the main part of this game I'm going to be going over because it was the best part. So if you are still thinking about playing this game, you're on the edge, you're on the fence, and you're watching YouTube videos to see if you want to play it or not, just go ahead. I'll give you the score right now. I'll give you my initial thought for what the score is, and then at the end of the video, I'll give you what I think about it after sitting on it for a few weeks. So I do recommend playing it. It's a good game. My initial score was to give it an 83 out of 100, but you'll find out what it is at the end of the video. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the biggest selling point of this game for me, the story. If you're going into this game blind, this is probably one of my favorite original stories in a video game that I have played in a long time. The story is unique. In pretty much all the video games that I've played, in an apocalypse setting of a video game especially, usually they all kind of center around the same themes, but this one, it actually had a lot of twists in the story that made it really unique for me in the games that I've played. Now, if you've played a few other games out there that have a similar sort of style as this one, then this probably doesn't mean much to you. But, in an apocalypse setting, sure, not very original. Everything these days is going apocalypse. An apocalypse setting where technology has reverted back, they're using bows and arrows. Okay, sure, I like that a bit more. An apocalypse setting where there is some kind of old technology intertwined with the reverted stuff. So you have machines and the caveman-esque bows and arrows. Oh, okay, I like that a bit more. But in apocalypse setting where you were trying to figure out why this is with all this other stuff, to figure out the secrets of the past, not try to build over to the future per se. Now, that's what really got me going. It's kind of almost like a detective story. First, let's start off. We are a baby. We were abandoned. This single dad adopted us, and he trained us how to be in this tribe, all outcasts, taught us how to hunt, fend for ourselves, become, the woman we were going to grow up to be, right? We happened to chance upon a hidden cave that had all the technology of the previous civilization, and we found this little earpiece that was opened the world to us. It showed us all these different things that would have meant nothing to us, if we wouldn't have been able to see it. And we could see all this new stuff. We learned so much more. We became so much smarter than anybody around us because none of them had access to this information. And moving forward, it grows up. We do 1 or 2 missions as the little kid, and then it skips us over to the adult where we're going to go and try to get back into the tribe by winning this competition where they accept everybody. A little weird, but it's whatever. Eventually, we do all this, and then our starting zone is attacked, and we have to venture out. The overall tutorial area was okay. I felt it was a bit long, but I do appreciate how they stopped doing all the tutorials all of a sudden and let you do you can go do tutorials if you want to later. That was nice. I just wanted to put that in there. As we venture out of the safety of the starting zone, we realize that the world is nothing like the tribes had thought it to be, as they lived in a sanctuary secluded from the outside world. We learn more about the neighboring tribes, the wars that had taken place before, and where all the machines were actually coming from. Eventually, we find ourselves in the service of a strange man that will only talk to us through our earpiece. He leads us through a majority of the rest of the game after we get to a certain point, and we actually learn more and help him learn more about what actually happened in the past to get us to this spot. Now, this is the part where I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this part. His character was really good, and they interacted really well with each other. Going into the game, you're like, okay, they had to have survived this machine onslaught somehow. Back in time, before the current state of the game, this guy created war machines to fight wars for humans, so humans didn't have to die. But then they went rogue. They couldn't crack their hacking. They couldn't hack them. It was taking over every robot ever made, and they could live off of biofuel, so they could eat people, plants, all that stuff to keep going. And there was no way to defeat them. They could remake themselves and all that jazz. So there was no way for humans to survive. So what did they do? They let all of humanity die. They let them all die. But then how did we get to the next part of the game? That's what I really liked. They created this whole system to that someday in the future, once they cracked the code of how to hack all of them, which took like several centuries or like a century and a half or something like that. They finally blew them all, or like destroyed all of them, coded wise or whatever. And then they were able to start reproducing humans through genetics and all that stuff and teach them all this new things. But then still, we figured out that, but why aren't we like regular humans? What happened? Why are all the things destroyed? But I think that twist in the story was something that was really cool and I hadn't really seen. Usually it's like, oh, the humans survived, and this is our story of trying to survive with the few dwindling numbers that we have. No, there was no way to save humanity. This is how we were able to have humanity live on in the future. We went extinct, but there was that, and the whole program is called Horizon Zero Dawn. It was really, really neat, and that's what I really liked about the story. So they have that AI help to restore humanity, but then what went wrong was they created a bunch of other AIs. So they made the main central AI, Gaia, that would control all the other ones, and they would all work together to recreate humanity. So there was one they made just in case Gaia accidentally destroyed the Earth again, or like made like it was really bad and they needed to restart. So they made a Hades one to kill everything on the Earth again in case Gaia messed up. Now, hindsight, terrible idea. When you're thinking about it in the time, you're like, oh, cool, yeah, that makes sense. What if she makes it uninhabitable and you need to kill all the plant life again and then restart from the start? You know what I'm saying? That makes sense. But hindsight, he just killed Gaia. But then Gaia like tried to destroy him and all that stuff, and a bunch of things happened. So the people that she made, didn't do very well after that, and then went into the little tribe sort of thing. And it was pretty cool. And I mean, just based off of like that story, it had some of those rough spots. Like the beginning was like, meh. I felt like one part in the middle was a little dry once you're trying to figure out where to get back onto the main story sort of deal. Other than that, the story was pretty darn good, and that's what I would expect from a story game from Sony at this point, right? For the length of the story, I looked it up and I was going to be like, okay, man, I got 25 hours around. It said the average was around 25 hours to beat the story of this game. It was like 20 or so hours or 18 or no, it was like 20. I think it was 25 just playing the main story to beat the main story on normal difficulty. And I was like, oh, cool. So that means the story is going to actually be pretty long. I beat the whole game in 18 hours doing most of the side quests and like exploring most of the world and doing all these things. And I mean, just based off of that alone, I can't recommend this game unless you can get the game for pretty cheap, because I usually base mine off of $1 an hour per games that I play. So I bought the game for 15 hours or $15, so that's 15 hours. So it kind of equaled out for me. Since we talked about the game, the story, how long it would take, let's talk about what you're going to be doing during the gameplay. It's really just okay. That's really all I can say about the gameplay in this game. It's really just okay, especially with the controller. I understand, it's on PS4, so I wanted to play it with a controller. There's some things that work really well with the controller that you wouldn't be able to do on a PC, but like aiming with the controller, aiming the bow is just horrendous. There's like no aim assist, even though it says there is. But I guess if you're used to it, it's fine. The dodging mechanics don't really work most of the time. The melee for like half of the game is better than the bow. You go up and you can hit them with the melee and it would do the same damage no matter where you hit them, but you had to hit like very small specific parts with the bow to actually do damage. I don't know. The inventory system is one of the worst inventory systems I've ever seen in a video game. I don't know why they limit you on your size in this. It's like, especially when you have to collect all these things to upgrade all your stuff, and the size of your inventory is tiny, even after you upgrade it all the way, which is what I did immediately. Upgraded my inventory all the way, and it's still tiny because you have to carry all these things to craft things in combat, and then you have to carry all these things to upgrade your stuff when you get to a person, because you can't really upgrade your stuff while you're out in the field. You have to go to a person to do it, and I don't know. Certain things in the game are also really weird, especially because when you get to that bow and arrow part, you can't shoot with the bow very well, so you go up to hit them, but you can't really hit most of the things in the game. You have to do the ranged bow, so that kind of like push and pull thing with the controller is so bad to aim with, but the controller is what makes the game really like feel really good in like the movement wise. So it's like, what can you do? The stealth portion of the game was actually pretty decent. I was gonna think that I was not gonna like the stealth just out of certain stealth games that I played recently. Cyberpunk stealth wasn't the best just because of how it works and everything, but the stealth in this game was actually pretty decent. There's a couple talents that made it like seamless, and it started to work perfectly from there on out. But I did enjoy it, and it doesn't bug out like other stealth options in games like these days, like I mentioned in Cyberpunk. Pretty much, everything balances off. It has its highs and its lows. It kind of just balances off to that okay gameplay. The boss fights are kind of rather silly in my opinion. I didn't play it on the hardest mode, but I didn't play it on strictly normal. I played it like between the hardest and the normal. Every fight it felt like the same, even though you were facing humans to some parts, to this giant war machine from the past, just other parts. It felt like the same boss fight each time. Dodge bad, hit bad, do good, heal. You didn't have to really do anything else besides that. It made every single fight feel the exact same way. And I know it's really hard to make it feel different, but I felt like the monsters or like the robots in the open world had more personality than any of these bosses really. Hide behind cover, pop out, shoot. Hide behind cover, pop out, shoot. They all really just felt the same, to be completely honest. Even some of like the bigger ones, and some of them were so cheesed. I was just like walking away, and I got outside of the boss's range or whatever, and it would just sit there, and I would shoot it, and it would get upset that I shoot it, and it would start running at me, and then it would go back sometimes, and it was cheesed. But sometimes it was just really annoying. I don't feel like any of the boss fights were really hard. So if you're looking for a challenge, I would definitely put it on the hardest mode. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, you're just going to get one shot and it's going to take a billion shots to kill them. So the difficulty of this game is very strange, and the boss fights were not my favorite. But one thing that was my favorite was the map and the exploration. I mean, just look at the map and how beautiful it is, and how like I feel like they put more time into creating this map than they did most of the boss fights. Everything from the wall climbing mechanics to the movement to the tall necks. Oh, the tall necks was really great. I love the tall necks in this game. In a time where every single open world game had a tower mechanic, this one was probably one of the more unique and well designed map mechanics of towers. Just looking at the movement of the towers, walking around in different environments was really neat. And the way to get up to them, you had to figure out how to get around all these enemies, or the climb up was different on each one, or how to get onto the tall neck. The exploration in this game was done really, really well. The only part I didn't like was getting from one place to the other took a long time, or there was a lot of enemies between you and getting to this other spot in the game. Back to the character we played, the different bows, weapons, and utility items that we could use never really stood out to me. The two different kind of bows were the only ones I used, the long range sharpshooter bow or the regular bow. I upgraded these bows pretty really early on, so they were really the only things I tried to use. I tried using some of the other weapons and tools early on in the game, but most of them either really took a really long time to set up, were used in niche situations, or just I could have finished the fight with the bow already. I would have liked to see other weapons and tools and actually have a place in the game besides filling in slots of your inventory. Now, what I would have liked to see is the crafting system helping you make the bows. I don't want to have to buy something from a vendor each time. I would like to upgrade my bow and make it better, like especially in a single player game. Like I think would have taken the Tomb Raider route and upgrading your bow and finding stuff and doing that would have been better than, let me just go buy this really good bow after I killed this one thing. The same thing kind of goes for the consumables in the game. For the most part, I would use some of them and they just wouldn't really do much. I would throw them down as supposed to shock them. They'd step right on it and it wouldn't really do anything. Really, I only ended up using the med consumables in the game, just because again they would take a long time to set up, they wouldn't really work, and I could just use my bow to kill everything. The crafting system was really bare bones. Really the only thing you could do was add these little modifications to your bow to make it a little bit stronger, your weapon or your armor to make you a little bit stronger. But I would have really liked to see what I mentioned earlier, where you can actually upgrade your bow and keep upgrading it, go around and get all these things to upgrade it. And my other thing, this wouldn't be a problem if the vendoring system wasn't so bad. You not only need to get the currency, but you need to get these crafting materials to buy something, to barter with the vendors to get something, which was very, very strange. And it was really hard to figure out what you needed because you had a small inventory. You had to go to the person, which at the beginning of the game, fast traveling isn't really an option because you have to buy something to fast travel, and it was a very limited resource. So just doing all the things, it just was a recipe for, I just don't really want to do this anymore. I just want to go do quests and the side stories and stuff. I don't really want to upgrade my stuff anymore. And I think that's really, it's something it took away from the game. They made these unnecessarily unfun mechanics that destroyed the fun part of the game. And that's why at the beginning of the game, I was like, oh man, I think I want to give it an 83, but then when I think about it more, it makes me want to take down the score a bit. Overall, like I said before, I included that in the gameplay. It was just okay. It had some highs, it had some lows, but man, it was just okay. The graphics in the game were kind of just amazing, especially for a game that came out in 2017. Playing Horizon Zero Dawn in 2023, I was expecting it to look pretty outdated, to be honest. Now, thinking back on it, it is the remastered or version for the PC, and playing it, it looks pretty darn good. And some parts were just eye candy, especially with the art style and the direction that the game developers took porting it to the PC. Now it looks really darn good. The diversity of the zones were actually kind of astounding. From the thick forest to the frozen peak to the arid desert, you kind of forget you're in Ohio. No, it wasn't Ohio. But this map just really had it all, and it was really good. The map was rather large, and it felt larger because you couldn't really fast travel for a majority of the game until you were able to unlock the good fast travel thing that made it so you can actually have unlimited fast travels, which again, I hate. And then the moving around, there's so many enemies between you and the next place you want to go to. It would take forever to get over there unless you just ran by everything. So that's what made it feel so much larger than it actually was. It really only suffers from what most games of these days suffer from, and that was the character models. Now, I understand that getting these character models right is a lot harder than making a tree look good. So I understand, because the tree is only going to move in a certain way, but if you think about it, the character is only going to move in a certain way, just more ways. But some people were way worse looking than some. Now I'm going to put some video in here that shows you some of the bad parts of what this, and you can kind of see it a little bit, but this wasn't the worst offense throughout the time I was playing. The character's eyes would dart around, just boom, 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 and it would look really weird when you're talking to them. And a lot of the time, it looks like they're just going, and the voice wasn't matching up to the lips at all, which really ruined the immersion in some points of the game. Now, this is likely from the technology at the time that it came out, and I would expect something more from the latest Horizon game, but this is the one I'm reviewing right now, and right now in 2023, that's just not really good, especially looking back on Cyberpunk that had a really good, the eyes and the mouths looked really decent for that game. Some things are just better than others in the gameplay and graphics department, so what can you do? But when the rest of the game looks so good, it just makes the character models look that much bad. So the character models are actually pretty decent, but since the rest of the game looks good, it makes the character models look bad. Just like most ports from PC to PlayStation, man, it didn't run that good. I mean, PlayStation, I understand why you make it so it doesn't run very good. Sony, doesn't really care. They would rather you go buy a PlayStation than buy it on PlayStation and play it on PlayStation. But it's crazy to me that Cyberpunk on full ray tracing runs better than this game on normal. That's just weird to me. I was thinking about it, oh man, it kind of runs okay. It looks really great, but then you compare it to Cyberpunk, probably one of the best looking games, fully ray traced, max settings, and it runs better than this game, normal, high settings. It doesn't really make any sense. So the port isn't that good. Now, my game didn't crash on me. I think maybe it did once. I don't think it was that many times. So that was nice. And then they didn't really have any of the latest versions of the DLSS and FSR and all that stuff implemented. So if you put that on, it had the earlier problems of those in the game as well. But hey, it still looked pretty good. So it just continues that trend of pretty bad ports from the PC or from PlayStation and consoles to the PC. Overall, I enjoyed my time playing Horizon Zero Dawn. It was a lot more fun than I really expected it to be, especially when I see these soy boys crying online about how much they hate the game. I was like, oh man, this game's probably not that good if they're complaining about this much. No, it was actually a really good game. They just hate main characters being women, which is cringe. In this review, I was really critical of some things, right? But I wanted to tell you all the bad parts that I didn't enjoy, but the rest of the game I really liked. It was a really fun game. The story was amazing. And I think if you are looking for a good story game, this is one of the good story games out there that you can play. As long as you're into that post-apocalyptic, trying to figure out what happened before Silver Deal. The game's rather good. Great story. Decent gameplay. Good graphics. And, if you can get this game on a sale, it is a killer deal if you can get this for $15, which it was on the last Steam winter sale. But I would not recommend buying it at the normal price. All right, thanks for watching. That's going to be it. My final score, like I said, I think I'm going to give it a high 70 in the 79 out of 100. I was thinking that 83, like I said before, but I think I would give it a 79 just because of the port, the way it runs, and the gameplay. Other than that, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Go follow my Twitch or something. I don't really care. Leave a comment. I read them. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.